Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's a founder and CEO, Arden Coaching, dynamic, relatable, smart guest, and of course, podcast on a human side of leadership, no other than Miss Maren Perry.
Hi, Daniel. Good to see you.
Welcome, Miss Maren. Our Book 101 review, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Oh, certainly. So I'm the founder and CEO of Arden Coaching. We're a B2B leadership development firm. We focus on the human side of leadership and making better leaders throughout the entire organization.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Maren. Thank you. So today, let's talk about stop wasting money on leadership training that does not work. Why most programs fail. So let's start with the brutal truth. Study shows that a massive percentage of leadership training fails to produce lasting change. What is the single biggest, most expensive delivery mistake organizations make that guarantees failure from the start?
Yeah, well, I think that we have to go back to how people produce different results, right? What is the formula for how people make change and produce results? We say that that is insight plus action equals results. So you have two main components. The insight, that's the thinking shift that will change to produce something different, and then the action is putting it in place, right? Two basic components. I believe that most leadership development programs fail because they completely forget about the second half, that they focus somewhat on that insight piece, really as a matter of training where they are delivering information, but they don't put it in practice, right? Practice is not going to take place in a 2-hour program that you do some afternoon. It's going to take place day in, day out in your actual work with the people that you work with, and it's going to take many iterations. So most programs do not take that into account at all, and they expect to deliver a certain amount of information in a relatively short amount of time, and that is not going to make a difference because they leave out the entire second half. Now, I also think they leave out half of that first piece of insight. So if you take insight, that is really broken down into two components: information and revelation. And most leadership development programs focus on the information piece. They're focusing on delivering models, delivering new concepts or ideas of ways of looking at things. And that's all valid. That's an important aspect of what leadership training needs to incorporate. However, if you don't then apply that to the individual, that's the revelation part. That's the, oh my goodness, I do that. Wait, you're talking about me. That whole communication model, or talking about emotional intelligence and self-awareness, that piece is incredibly valuable, but I need to apply it to me. So most leadership development programs, I think, miss out on 75% of how people actually produce results and create change. They're missing out on the action piece, and they're missing out on half of the insight piece, that revelation component where people actually have to apply it to themselves and don't just sit and take notes on an abstract concept.
Abstract concept. Well, we will talk about that on abstract essay, Ms. Maran. So beyond just being boring, why does the classic event-based training model fail to create actual behavioral change in leaders once they are back to their desks?
Well, I think it goes back to that revelation piece. If you're just getting information, it's not enough. We have more information in our pockets, in our phone, than people have had throughout history in every book that they could read in a lifetime. We have access to information.
Yes.
Information in and of itself does not make a difference. You must apply that to your own habits, your own understanding, your own default ways of thinking and acting. That's the revelation component. And so just spewing out models of this is a way you can think about forming, norming, storming, performing, different ways of thinking about communication. All of those models are great, but they're not going to help you if you don't apply it to yourself, because I may be really great at giving feedback and terrible at accepting it, but the person sitting next to me may be the opposite. And so we can hear the same information, but we need to apply it in totally different ways. And if I skip over that piece of, wait, what about me? Then I'm not going to get the value of the information. And I don't think that you can do that for the most part effectively in a classroom setting where the focus is on the information.
Interesting, interesting indeed,
Otherwise,
and
boring.
empowering too. Many programs focus on abstract concepts like vision or authenticity. How does this lack of behavioral specificity or specific, not teaching exactly what they say and do on Monday morning, doom a program from the beginning?
Yes. Well, I do think that, again, models for all of those things are great. Models for communication, models for building trust, models for creating a vision, as you say, that's wonderful. And sometimes they actually will provide, some programs will provide what to do on Monday morning in terms of steps, but they've skipped over the revelation part. That's the individuating aspect that is so critical, because vision is a large concept. It's going to mean something different to different people. And I can give you a model for how to identify the values of your organization or how to create a long-term vision for your company. But if we don't talk about what that actually means in your company, that for the most part already exists, right? It has its culture, it has its history. If we don't talk about it for you and how you have currently been applying those things, your vision, your values, we're going to be missing the important piece of how it's going to make a difference to you. So we might skip over and we might go to the, what am I going to do on Monday morning? And I'm trying to follow the protocol from the class. I'm trying to go through the steps that I was given, but it's missing out on how my organization has perhaps ignored those values on the wall and how they've been written up there for 15 years, but the guy I sit next to doesn't follow any of them, and he's the star performer, and he's been rewarded instead of being fired. Right? So we can't skip over how the information applies to the company that you actually work in before we get to those action items. The action items are critical. You're right. You have to do something different on Monday morning. But if you don't think about the company that you exist in and the culture you exist in, you can't just go from the information right to application.
Ms. Maren, let's talk about the flawed foundation. Organizations often send individuals to training to fix them. Why is it deficit-based approach fundamentally flawed? And how does it kill a leader motivation or leaders and engagement from the outset?
Yeah, that's such a great question. We definitely see people using leadership development programs, or even more specifically, one-on-one coaching programs to, as you say, quote unquote, fix somebody.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we have to start with there's nothing wrong with them as a human, right? They may have behaviors that you don't like for your organization. They may not be the leader you want as a representation of your culture, but you can't fix somebody. You can adapt their behavior. You can persuade them that these behaviors are not effective and don't get them what they actually want, but you're not there to fix somebody. And again, if you step over the application to the individual, general information is not going to shift their behavior. So for most leaders who are resistant or that people send for corrective action or fixing or, trying to adjust. I think that the organization has missed the mark typically on uh, tying together for that leader their behavior and what they actually desire. Now, that takes a little bit of digging usually, and some excellent coaching questions to get at what that leader actually wants for themselves, because no one does anything that isn't in their ultimate interest or doesn't match what they're going for. No one walks around saying, I think I'll make the third best decision today, right?
Mhm.
Everyone's trying to do what they think is the right thing, um, even if that's acting from some default behavior that is not acceptable or not optimal. Um, so to get them on board, the organization or the coach or the facilitator needs to make sure that that individual is really clear on what they're trying to accomplish. What is their intention? Is it to make money for the company? Is it to make money for themselves? Is it to get advanced in their career? Is it to leave a legacy that's meaningful to them? What are they trying to do? Because all of the skills that we teach can be tied to any of those things, but they are probably missing the connection between their personal driver and goal and how these tools support that.
A huge failure point is that training is often completely disconnected from a real work, Miss Maren. How can a program be designed so that the training is the work and the work is the training?
Ah, such a great question, Daniel. Thank you. Yes, that whole second component, insight plus action equals results. That action piece, you're right, it has to be tied to their real work. It can't be theoretical. It can't be, this is a good idea. It has to be actually tied to their position, the people they work with, the projects they're working on, and what they're trying to accomplish. So most programs focus on that information component, and it's a very one-sided delivery. To do what you're talking about, to integrate it into their actual work, you need someone by their side who's going to be with them over time, because this does not happen in a classroom in 2 hours, right? You can't practice giving more meaningful feedback to your team even in one sample session or one role play in a leadership development program. You're talking about shifting habits that people have had for a decade or 2 decades, 4 decades, right?
Mhm.
You need to shift their habits. So that has to take place over time, where they're working with a coach, working with a cohort of coaching to make sure that they are practicing, bringing it back and saying, this is what I tried. This is what was great. This went terribly. What did I miss? How can I shift it? How do I need to shift my thinking to deliver that feedback in a more positive way? Because all I want to say is, that was terrible. Don't do that again. Right. Um, so they need that coach by their side, and the application piece, and I think most organizations want to skip over it because it is slower and it has a cost associated with it. So it's much easier to click a box and say, we provided leadership training. It was great. It was 4 hours on a Thursday afternoon. But it's not what will really move the needle. What will move the needle is what you're talking about, which is integrating it into their actual work, where they have to sit with a coach and get into the nitty gritty of, this is how I'm going to deliver this message. Oh, wait, that's not going to be effective. Let me rework it. I need to do it differently with person A than person B, and have someone individuate it for them and work with them to make sure it actually applies to their real situation and isn't just theory from a class that was 3 weeks ago.
Miss Maren, we rarely measure ROI on a soft skills training. What are the
Mm,
lagging indicators and, more importantly, leading indicators we should be tracking to see if it's working?
mm. Yeah, this is tricky, and this is very specific to each organization. I think this ties to your last question about how does it apply to one's actual work. You have to be tracking people's performance in their actual roles and know, as an organization, what your leadership competencies are and what behaviors tie to those leadership competencies. If you just say we want better leaders and you don't define what that is and no one knows, then it could be anything, right? People could be succeeding or failing and no one will know. So the first step is to make sure that the organization has clearly defined leadership competencies and measures and actions that tie to those competencies. And then you have to measure them at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program and 6 months later and 12 months later, because human beings take time to change and shift. Just because you took a leadership development program last month doesn't mean you're brilliant now, right? You need to practice. You need to practice and fail, and you need to practice and try again and make sure that you're iterating and growing. And I think organizations tend to underestimate how long it takes us as adult humans to learn new things. We're slow. We don't like to change our behavior. No, like I said, no one's walking around saying, I think I'd like to be a B- leader, right? No one's doing that on purpose. They have default habits that they don't even recognize. And that takes time to shift. It is not the click of a button. And it's not just because you had that 4 hours on a Thursday afternoon.
Yes, definitely. Empowering, empowering indeed, Ms. Maren. So, as a founder and CEO of Arden Coaching, what are your short term and long term goals?
Oh, well, we have created a new iteration of our leadership development program, our Arden Leadership Academy. Last year, we revamped it. We've had it for about 8 years and it's grown over time, but we really shifted it to tie more closely to our Arden 8, which is our 8 essential leadership dimensions necessary for every leader. This ties to a lot of organizations' leadership competencies. And so one of my short-term goals is making sure that that program is powerfully integrated with our current clients and that we have new clients on the horizon that will enjoy that program. It's so powerful because it integrates coaching and training modules. It's a combination of both. So the insight and the action piece are incorporated. So that's a short-term goal, is more widespread use of our new iteration of that program. A long-term goal for us is expanding our reach with our enterprise clients and making sure that we are touching at least 5,000 leaders a year. That's our goal.
Good luck to your goals, Ms. Maren, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Gosh, I think being willing to take risks and fail and learn from them.
Yes, definitely. People don't afraid to, well, take the risk, take the failure, and everything else because you will learn from them to be better, to be the
You
best
win
in
or
the
you
future.
learn, right?
Yes. So, thank you for that advice, Ms. Maren. Thank you, thank you. And can you please recommend a book of books that influence your journey?
Oh gosh, I have a whole bookshelf behind me that would be great to recommend. I think I will start with recommending Immunity to Change.
Mhm.
It's a profound book. Let me make sure I get all the authors for you. It has, I think, 4 authors. Keegan and Leahy, I believe, are the authors. I hope I'm not misspeaking. But Immunity to Change. It talks about this habitual default that we have, and that system is set up in us to reactivate itself. And then if we're looking to shift, we have to address the habit and the benefits of that prior way of working before we're actually able to make a change. And this can apply in business, this can apply in people's personal lives. It's a little bit of a dense read, I'll warn you, but it's fabulous. It's a profound book.
Yes, and thank you for the recommended book, Miss Maren. And let's talk about the individual leader's responsibility. What should a leader demand from their organizations before they agree to attend any training to ensure their time won't be wasted?
That's great. I don't know that a lot of people are given the option to say no, but I
Mm-hmm.
think you're right that there are legitimate questions to ask. I think, uh, what is the intended outcome? What are you expecting me to take from this training? And what would you like to see different as a result of this training in an ideal world, right? What would you like to see different at the end of it and 6 months from now?
And Ms. Marin, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in its third season, and my book 101 review in its sixth season this year, comedy 101 in third season, food 101 in sixth season, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 at fourth season, science 101, sex 101 in its third season, and my baby podcast, trivia 101, love 101, mental health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and I'm inviting you, Miss Maron, to be part of my Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. So, Miss Maron, if you had to give one piece of actionable advice to stop wasting money tomorrow, what would be to stop buying generic programs to start solving specific business problems with targeted development?
Biggest piece of advice is don't leave out any of the steps. Insight plus action equals results. That means you need information, revelation, and putting it in practice over time. It doesn't happen in the room, it happens in your job.
Over time, people, it's not just 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It's a process. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom once again, Miss Maran. Thank
Thank you, Daniel.
you. Yes, and can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Certainly. Well, I'd like to offer your listeners a gift, actually. If they go to our site, which is ardencoaching.com, and fill out the contact form, mention Book 101, we have a free assessment that will take them through all of the Arden 8 and let them know how their organization is doing.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Marin Perry, because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering leadership development will rise. So, one more question, Miss Marin. What is the role of teaching leaders how to teach? To cascade frameworks and mindset for their own teams, or in creating a true ROI multiplier on the training investment?
Yes, this is one of our Arden 8, which is developing others, because it's critical that leaders are focused on developing those on their team. You can't do it alone. If you're a subject matter expert, you can't just step in and take over and do all the work, right? You have to be developing other people. It's critical to succession planning, to attrition, all of the metrics that your company is going to measure in terms of employment. So gaining those skills is part of what it is to be a leader.
Miss Maren Perry, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Always a pleasure.
Marty, people, I'll see you soon.